moving through Monkey Wrench Woods. Monkey Wrench Woods was so named because from an air view it looked like a monkey wrench. And this is into the Siegfried Line on a two-day attack on Sins. We lost a lot of men in the woods. We lost a lot of men in the open field, a half mile going into Sins, which we captured about half of it. But there are so few of us left, and there's an armored division getting its first combat experience, the 8th Armored, and we had quite a bit of bad work from them, as long as good work, firing on our own people. Had to sneak up and bang on the hulls of their tanks to stop them from shooting at us, and tell them where they should aim their damn guns. But we had so few people left that night, after repelling more attacks from the 11th Panzer Division, we were pulled out of there. We went back to our original lines in the edge of the woods.
Welcome to Triumphant Spirit, America's World War II Generation Speaks. This program is a series of broadcasts featuring the stories of a generation that fought and won the Second World War. No matter how they fought the war or where, on the home front or the battlefield, each veteran featured on the program contributed valiantly to a victory that changed the 20th century. Here are their stories in their own words. They are stories of actions and deeds that not only helped shape the outcome of the war, but the very world we live in today. Combat at its worst was experienced by the frontline infantrymen during World War II. Imagine the effects of a determined enemy shooting at you, incoming artillery fire seeking to tear you to pieces, constant exposure to the weather, little sleep, if any at all, the unrelenting noise of battle. Combine all these elements, and you have only the beginning of an understanding of what it was like to be in combat. When the 94th Infantry Division moved into position below the Siegfried Line in northeast France in January of 1945, little did its infantry know they would face nearly 3 months on the line fighting and dying. The 94th became General Patton's little gem, because it fought so well during his drive to the Rhine after the Battle of the Bulge. Capturing the daily action and combat drawings was infantryman William Foley, 18 years of age. Although not a trained artist at the time, Bill put his innate talent to work, drawing after a day's events what his mind could recall. Drawing became a way to relieve the stress, the strain, and the pain. As if on a God-given mission, Bill vividly captured in his drawings the stark realities of men engaged in brutal combat. His battle scenes will soon be published in a forthcoming book that should be a part of the library of everyone who is interested in combat of World War II. We interviewed Bill via satellite from Texas. Please enjoy this very special edition of Triumphant Spirit.
After the initial combat, my first combat, where we lost 60% of our men, we we moved south along the line about 8 miles to near Orsholtz and occupied holes and dugouts that had been dug by the 301st Regiment of our division. And so we had relative comfort out of the snow and the rain. The man that I had been assigned to was a BAR, Browning automatic rifleman. Name was Dan. We became very good friends. There was a rumor of some hot food, a hot breakfast, and he took our mess kits and went back. I was alone in the dugout, and I realized that I had not written. I had promised, like everyone, to write faithfully, and I took out a V-mail form, and my hands are dirty, and I'm smudging the V-mail paper. In my imagination, I began to see things in the smudges, and I began doodling with this pencil. And pretty soon the whole line of foxholes and dugouts down a 2nd platoon line began to appear. I stuck my head outside and took a look. With about 20 minutes, I had the drawing done, and I propped it up on one of the logs on the roof of the dugout. And when Dan came back with the food, he was really amazed, and I was moved to give him the drawing. I tried to rescue it from his body some months later. One of the guys found a Browning automatic rifle in the dark. It was very, very dark. There's some snow. The front sight was missing. A few nights previously, it had been shot off. And Dan was slightly wounded in the face. Probably the sight clipped him, maybe a bullet. Nearby, we found Dan, and he was in pretty bad shape. Very bad shape. Couldn't drink. I carried morphine in the stock of my M1. I stuck it in the soft part of his thumb. And after a while, we managed to get him into town. We kept our wounded in the cellar, but our medic was no longer able to do anything. His hair, I hesitate talking about that, but his hair turned white within a matter of 2 or 3 days. And he was no longer able to function. We put him to work loading up clips of magazines and clips of BAR ammunition, this type of thing. This is where we're carrying whatever weapons we can find. Through some wire, through a shell hole. There are flares. We got in just in time because the Germans mounted another attack and they were coming down the hill. I got Dan into the cellar. He died early the next morning, and I wasn't there when he died. We had a lot of wounded. We lost a lot of people, probably about 60% or more. We had men captured. We recaptured them. It's an insane thing. This is one of the earlier ones. Somebody came up with a bottle of ink and a pen, but I managed to mount it onto a board. I rather liked it. I used snow for the wet to get a watercolor effect, which, believe me, I don't think I even heard of watercolor when I was 18 years old. But my finger came in handy in spreading the color around. I didn't have a brush. Geographically, this is not very accurate about our attack across the open area into the town of Sins. But it does show some of the feeling. We were under constant bombardment by 120 millimeter mortars, 80s, 88 cannon fire. Right behind the town of Sins rises the very long ridge called Munzingen Ridge, which was the backbone of the Siegfried Line. We managed to help each other off the line after we were relieved, but I saw something that really devastated me. Moving through the woods, I saw many men with stretcher bearers, litters, and then I saw this long line of men from my battalion, from my company. The bodies were all lined up there. It was intense sadness because I was still feeling everything very much, but within 2 or 3 days I didn't feel I became objective, what the men would call numbness. I became intensely objective about everything, whether it was physical pain. I knew I wanted to survive. I could not give in. I became very tough. The weather was terrible because after weeks of black, gloomy, miserable, wet weather between snow and drizzle, a very strange experience of sunlight suddenly sweeping like a searchlight. Did you ever have the feeling of, after being in the dark and sunlight hurts your eyes, you have a headache? And it swept right across our position, and it ticked up over the battlefield. It just ticked up. All of this stuff cosmetically buried in snow and mud. And then it was dark. The battles continued. The next morning, it was perfectly clear. Our P-47s finally had some weather. It came in, and I can't describe the joy of watching them going in, circling, picking out their targets, and we're shouting. I wanted to jump out of the hole and just celebrate. I couldn't do it. We're too close to Munzingen Ridge, where they have great optics. This particular drawing simply shows a guide standing there to direct the men to the right path through the woods and down a hill. There's white engineer's tape, which is put there by either the infantry or the engineers to show where the mines are and where to stay off of. You find that stuff all over the place. It gets dirty after a while, and you can't trust it. This is where Dan and I were in an outpost, the other side of the Saar River, and a German patrol had gone to ground during the night and stayed there. I suspect that they were goofing off. They spent the whole night right in front of us, having no idea where we were. In the morning, they were stirring and kind of lifted up out of the mist, and one of them was urinating, and I killed him. This particular drawing is the top of Munzingen Ridge. I tried to symbolize what it was like to get up on that ridge, finally, that had been looking down at us for many weeks. He's tired. This particular drawing, I think, reflects any infantry soldier's feeling about the road. The emphasis, obviously, is on that. This is taking a 10-minute break, moving up the hill, Munzingen Ridge. There are more ambulances coming down than trucks going up. Earlier, we spoke about the death of Dan, and at this particular time, he probably just about a few minutes before he was wounded. Little by little, the action over the days seemed to creep up the line towards us. It was a major German attack. I remember Dan shouting in my ear, "We've got to pull out." This is after Schomerick, and we're moving back, and we passed a battery of heavy artillery. And out of great respect for these men who saved our tails time and time again, I remember almost everybody just took their helmets off. Made a sardonic thank you. This is back up in the hills, just east of the Saar River. The reason I like this, I'm not crazy about the design, but I had done a drawing which practically got destroyed one wet day when I was under a shelter hap and I was drawing this thing. I loved the figure of the guy with the M1, and it got wet. And I had to move around and pick up our Coleman squad stove. God bless Mr. Coleman. My first action as a squad leader was to attack a hill. This is when we're going up the hill, and I'm sending a few men off to the flank to cover us. We had a grenade exchange on top of the hill. They tried to surrender. Somebody tried to surrender and waved a white flag. There was a pistol shot. We moved into the trench. There was a German officer with a smoking Luger staring at a young man that he just shot. The officer then surrendered. He must have shot the young man who wanted to surrender, who waved the white cloth. Shot him because he didn't want to surrender. And then almost immediately, when the grenades were coming in, he decided better, and he did this. I don't know whether it's because I'm Irish or what it is, but 5 times in my life I have seen red, and it is literally true. I don't know if you've ever experienced this phenomenon, but it's a dirty red film takes your eyesight away for a second, and you do something violent. I killed the German officer. I took his beautiful binoculars, his Luger. It was the first good Luger that I found. Nice holster, extra magazine, 9 rounds. We threw his body over the trench. We set up housekeeping. In this particular house, we're in a reserve position, a support position. Another company has gone over that hill back there. They ran into an ambush and got a lot of casualties. And so there was walking wounded and people being carried past all day. And a lot of times I ran out there and I would pick up people. I knew where the aid station was, in a barn around the corner. Up on the dirt road in this farm country of small villages, a very strange sight. It looked like a sculpture, a marble sculpture in the middle of a dirt track. What the hell is it doing here? So I move on up. It's a very quiet area, and I see that there are 3 dead men, absolutely frozen white. This is just a drawing which I liked because the first kid that I helped, who came probably from F Company, came back, and I think he'd stepped on a shoe mine, but his foot was really messy, really in bad shape. And he was hopping along, collapsed. So I grabbed him and took him back to the aid station. Sort of a pretty rough self-portrait. This is the morning after the mine explosion that blew this kid away, and we lost 1 tank when a Panzerfaust German rocket was launched from a few feet away. We run back probably about several hundred yards, and we get the order to dig in. It's impossible to dig in. I pass out. I assume I just fell asleep. I don't know what happened. This is 7 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I wake up. I went to sleep with the sound of shells hitting the trees. We're on trucks and we got shelled. And this is the closest call that I had, really, because I love to get on the trucks early before anybody else and get up on the front and lean over the cab. But I love being up there, and I would tell myself, well, if I see a sniper, I'm in a good position. We pass through towns with white sheets hiding out the windows, people peering out the windows, peeking at us, frightened. And we get shelled. The 3rd shell, everybody was piling off the trucks. The shelling was coming too close, and instead of jumping off, I made a very smart decision, and I dived. And the moment that I hit the ground, a shell hit about 15 feet away, exactly the spot where I had been a split second before. If I had jumped off, I would have been cut in half. This particular drawing over here was done sitting on a 6x6 truck the next day after this. When I went to art school in the GI Bill, my teacher, who had been a war artist in the Pacific, had me do that drawing into a painting. The man on the picnic table in this saloon up on the banks, we took over the house. There were 5 of us. Germans got into the house. We pushed them out. I wounded one with a hand grenade. He was a medic, unfortunately. He had notes on him from GIs that he had helped, who had been captured. I kept him alive, gave him morphine, treated his wounds, evacuated him. But this is when another kid and myself were just walking around the area, and we had just checked out a soap factory, huge pieces of green soap, big blocks of green soap. This guy took a shot at us, missed for about 100 yards, and he was in a factory that we had just checked out. We sneaked back in, went around, went into the big storage room, located where the Germans were dug in. The most unusual foxhole of World War II. They dug a foxhole into a cake of green soap. They could fire out the window where they took a shot at us. These were bomb holes when our bombers were trying to get the Autobahn Bridge, which is just north of us, There had been a wooden bridge built next to it by the German army that was also destroyed, probably a few hours before we got there, after they pulled their last people across the river as we were approaching the river. They blew those bridges. The American bombers had the bomb holes all over that area. We captured a town, another battalion moved through us. We take over a house, we try to get some rest. My good friend Rupp, he comes in very excited and he says, "Come on, Foley, I got some food lined up." We rush down to a German butcher shop. We walk in, there's this nice big fat butcher with a bloody apron, and he's dealing with a woman buying meat. Rupp doesn't hesitate. He's done his patrol work well. We go in the back of the shop. There's a woman back in the back room cutting up beautiful steaks, lots of meat hanging on the hook, sacks of potatoes and vegetables. She stops in mid-movement of cutting into a piece of meat. Rupp goes to her chopping block, picks up a stack of steaks. I grab potatoes. We run out into the front of the store, and there is a captain standing there with a clipboard and a beautifully tailored uniform and trench coat. But this guy insisted that we were working against him as far as food is concerned. Rupp never hesitated a moment. He had his rifle on his shoulder, brought the butt of the rifle right into the testicles of this nice captain, who doubled over and started thinking about other things, and we dashed away laughing like hell, went up to the house several blocks away, had a great meal. Great meal. You don't fool with the infantry. You do not fool with the dog face. We lost people. We lost some beautiful people. Bad times, but it wasn't like the earlier times. A lot of interesting, wonderful things, wonderful memories in a way, highly dramatic. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I survived. And despite the negative, it built me into a much better person.